A gloomy outlook for the future of Florida's infrastructure. You're listening to The Wrap from Central Florida Public Media. I'm Brendan Byrne. A new report from GHD, a global engineering firm, shows young Floridians have a gloomy outlook on the future of Florida's infrastructure. Crossroads found that Generation X, Y, and Z Floridians were the most pessimistic out of the four major states surveyed, including New York, California, and Texas. GHD's Maria Lehman says 2/3 of Floridians want better environmental sustainability.
Because they see how that can impact. And so it's really important that people understand the challenges we're facing. The infrastructure's getting older, whether it's roads or bridges or airports, they're not keeping up with the capacity that they need.
How young people feel about the future of our roads. That's ahead on The Wrap. The big stories this week from Central Florida Public Media. But first, these headlines. Orange County voters will decide on a new charter amendment that would give county commissioners greater authority over the development of rural land. The proposed amendment would allow commissioners to create rural boundaries over land in East Orange County, making it harder for developers to build urban areas. Over 80 residents showed up for public comment earlier this week regarding the proposals. Among them was Dana Hitchinson, a resident of East Orange County.
Developers, lobbyists, and even some elected officials are still pushing for irresponsible growth into our rural areas. We're not fooled by promises of parks and education centers. These things do not mitigate the damage done by this unchecked urban sprawl.
The measure will appear on the November ballot. The board is still working on a separate proposed amendment that would allow commissioners to approve voluntary annexations with the county's rural lands. Commissioners will vote on whether or not voters will see it on the ballot at a future meeting. The blood donor bank, One Blood, is operating at a reduced capacity after experiencing a ransomware attack. As Central Florida Public Media's health reporter Joe Mario Pedersen explains, the blood bank is the primary provider of blood in Florida.
Cybersecurity experts are still determining the nature of the attack and a plan to get the systems back online. In the meantime, One Blood is still collecting, testing, and distributing blood, but at a reduced capacity as it's shifted to manual operations. As a result, One Blood has urged hospitals to begin using blood shortage protocols. One Blood serves 250 hospitals in the southeast United States. Susan Forbes is a One Blood spokeswoman and says donors are still critical at this time.
No, the message has not changed. The need for blood is constant. So no matter the circumstances that we are facing, our life-saving mission will prevail.
According to Forbes, it is unclear who was responsible for the attack at this time or what information was taken by the attackers. Joe Mario Pedersen, Central Florida Public Media.
The white woman whose accusations of rape in 1949 led to a notorious miscarriage of justice against the Groveland Four has died. Central Florida Public Media's Joe Burns reports.
Norma Upshaw, formerly Paget, died of natural causes on July 12th, according to a probate court in Georgia. She was 92. In 2019, Paget still insisted she didn't lie about the assault. The evidence, such as perjury in the case, and the hiding of facts that cleared the young black men, says otherwise. Ernest Thomas was killed by a posse in 1949. Charles Greenlee was arrested at 16 and sent to prison. Walter Irvin was injured, and Samuel Shepard was killed by Sheriff Willis McCall after their initial convictions were overturned. Thurgood Marshall and the NAACP had won their case on appeal. A Lake County Circuit judge officially cleared all four in 2021. The state attorney said McCall led a, quote, criminal conspiracy against them. Joe Burns, Central Florida Public Media.
More Central Florida news stories on our website. Visit cfpublic.org. The 2024 election cycle is in full swing, and this year, journalists here at Central Florida Public Media and at our public media partners across the state have put together a voting guide to help you decide who gets your vote. Want to know who's funding a candidate? Have questions about their stance on issues important to you? We've asked. See their answers on our voter guide at cfpublic.org. As many roads in Florida flood during rain events and more people move to the state, Florida's infrastructure is taking a toll. A report from GHD, a global engineering firm, shows how residents are feeling and thinking about Florida's infrastructure. Central Florida Public Media's Talia Blake spoke with Maria Lehman, the director of U.S. infrastructure at GHD. about those results.
We focused on the major states, both for population and where the infrastructure spend is. So Florida, Texas, California, and New York. And there were some things that were pretty surprising for us, for Florida. The focus on environmental issues, especially with younger generations, so the Gen X, Y, Z, have this growing awareness of the need for commitment to sustainability and resilience. And so they're pessimistic about the future because they're not necessarily seeing that in what's happening. And you look at their counterparts, you look at the other states, the Florida numbers were the most pessimistic of those 4 states. 2/3 of Floridians want to make sustainable choices, want to be more climate and eco-friendly because they see how that can impact. And so it's really important that people understand the challenges we're facing. The infrastructure is getting older, whether it's roads or bridges or airports, they're not keeping up with the capacity that they need. And so as we're rebuilding, we have to rebuild for the future and not for the current case. And as we all know, the future is hotter. And so we're seeing much more intensity.
So it floods very easily here in Florida, especially after even like regular rain events. Can you talk about why it floods so easily here in Florida?
The intensity of rain is increasing. Florida's always had intense rainfalls, but they're more intense than they used to be. You're getting more rain in less of a time frame. Central Florida was a wetland before it was the built-up Central Florida, and so it absorbed a lot of that water. It can't do it now because there's concrete in a whole lot of places that used to be wetland. And so you've got to build other areas that can take it. And quite frankly, that will help. You're not going to get as much of the heat island effect if you do that because it helps cool down, the area around it. It'll help with not having as much flooding.
So is there an example Florida should be looking to as to how to model our infrastructure after, given that we are a peninsula, surrounded by water on 3 sides?
I'll give you a great example in Singapore. They are planting trees like there's no tomorrow. They are doing systems, heating and cooling. So in some of the newer developed areas, you don't have HVAC in each building. You have a efficient, centralized that distributes the cooling. And so they're doing this on a district level. They're looking at using a lot of green roofs for cooling purposes, as well as to have more plant material to absorb the carbon dioxide. When you look at areas like Florida around the world, I think you're going to see a lot of what Singapore is doing 50 years from now, being like the status quo. Orlando's going to become a mega city. I mean, it's not going to have the skyscrapers. It'll be more like a rural mega city where it's a lot flatter, but it's already getting there right now. And so you've got to think about how you provide it, because by having all these different levels of government doing this, that's expensive. So as you get into a more centralized heating, cooling, water treatment, safe drinking water, providing green space that, not only lets people recreate, but again, absorbs some of that carbon dioxide, provides more oxygen, all that stuff makes sense.
Thank you so much, Maria. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Talia.
That was Central Florida Public Media's Talia Blake, speaking with GHD's Maria Lehman. That's it for The Wrap this week. This podcast is produced by Central Florida Public Media with assistance from News Director Latoya Dennis and Digital Director Ryan Ellison. I'm Brendan Byrne. This is The Wrap.